I got 4 cars and they all black, got 4 bras and they all that. We call that ballin'. Doing this is my calling. Flow is so appalling.
What's up? I'm Sal.
I'm RJ, and this is Dos
and Tres. Today we have a 2016 Cowboys season recap. We're not going to cover every game in the season, but we picked out key points that really shaped what the team became and really what personified the great 13-3 season. So let's get into it.
14-2 actually. The Eagles, that shit didn't count.
So the first point we want to talk about is where the season started, and that was the 2016 draft. And, a lot was riding on this draft, the 4th overall pick after the 4-12 disappointing season. After the season ended, I knew for sure the player that I wanted, no doubt, was Ezekiel Elliott. I remember that stretch of 3 games in the national championship playoffs where he just ran for over 200 yards in every game, and he was just a workhorse. I love watching the dude just blast up the middle and just take over games. It was incredible. In his next season, he didn't really put up the numbers that he did that year, but you saw something else from him that really stood out on the tape, in that he was a selfless player. He really put it out on the line for his teammates. 2 of the biggest highlights for Ohio State that year were big Braxton Miller touchdowns on screens, and the guy who opened those plays up was Zeke. He just leveled whoever was on the outside, the cornerback or safety, and that's what sprung him. Once the draft process started, Urban Meyer actually said that he was the best football player without the football in his hands that he ever coached. So that just reinforced the idea that this guy is a complete player. Not only can he take over the game running the ball and in the screen game, pass catching, but he's going to just obliterate people in pass blocking. He would just level people, getting pancakes like, a regular offensive lineman. The real debate at the time was whether they were going to pick Zeke or Ramsey. And, I was on the Zeke train from day one. And this dude, he was with the Ramsey train from day one. But that changed.
Yeah, that changed.
He's going to talk about that right now.
Yeah, I really liked Ramsey out of Florida State. I mean, I watched a lot of the Florida State games down here because we do live in Texas, so we do get a lot of those games from down here in the South. And I really liked Ramsey just because, man, I feel like he is a once in a DB that I don't think any DB, even though this draft class of DBs is really good, still don't think anyone is as good as him coming out. Maybe Lattimore, but that's about it. I kind of felt that I was contradicting myself because leading into the 12-4 season, the first time with DeMarco, I said, man, as long the reason that they're going to win the division, or if they're going to win the division, is because they're going to take care of the ball and control the ball and be able to block. And that was right after they drafted Zach Martin. Yep. And I said, you know what? Why am I changing my mentality now? Stick with Zeke. And plus, I did feel like last year's one of the most solid secondaries they had going into the draft. Plus, that was still yet to be determined until they had drafted Anthony Brown. Mm-hmm. But I still felt comfortable leading into the season with Scandrick, and hopefully Claiborne was going to stay healthy, and now Byron back there going to safety. Plus, he could still come down and cover the slot, and a lot of safeties can't do that besides maybe Vaccaro, and that's it. And Tyron. And I felt with Byron back there now, then it would really reassure it. I hopped on the Zeke train. So.
Yeah, after the 12-4 2014 season, I think the Cowboys got really arrogant, especially after DeMarco Murray leaving. The narrative coming out of there was, we can put anybody behind that offensive line. And what we saw was that wasn't true. A lot of people like to say, Darren McFadden had over 1,000 yards rushing, but how many touchdowns did he score? There's a big difference. I mean, you can get all those yards and not score touchdowns. I mean, and that's what Zeke completely changed, and that's why I really wanted him.
With McFadden, it was like hitting a home run in the bottom of the 8th inning when you're down by 7 with no runners on base. Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure, there's numbers there and it puts it up, but at the end of the day, does it really impact the game?
You're not even in contention in the game by that point.
Yeah.
I mean, you're grinding out yards to lose the game. You're just eating the clock. I mean, it didn't really affect the game at all.
Yeah.
So another thing in the 16 draft that I really wanted them to do was take a quarterback. I feel like I've been saying the Cowboys needed to take a quarterback since going all the way back to 2007. We've had Romo. He's a great quarterback. I mean, he completely carried the team. But, that led to injuries and then 8-8 seasons, things like that. They just needed a young guy in there. And the guy I liked was Paxton Lynch. And evidently Jerry Jones liked him too because he was trying to trade up to get him. That didn't pan out. Then comes the 4th round. They're trying to trade up for Connor Cook. That doesn't happen. So they're sitting there at their pick, and who's on the board? Dak Prescott.
Blessing in disguise.
Yeah, Dak Prescott, the guy that they coached at the Senior Bowl. He was the forgotten man, really, because he had all the stats and everything from college. The thing was that DOI after his pro day really killed him. Nobody was talking about Dak anymore after that. He was just forgotten. But luckily, Scott Linehan remembered him, coaching him at the Senior Bowl. And I believe whenever Dak got the call that he was drafted from the Cowboys, Linehan actually said some things are just meant to happen. And as we saw, what we're going to talk about later, some things were just meant to happen.
Yeah, some people compared him to Tebow and stuff, but the thing that most stood out about him is that he developed as a passer throughout his college career every single year. And I did say I really thought that he could be a Russell Wilson, but little did I know that he was going to be experiencing that straight out of the gate in his first year. Just the way things turn out, just turned out to be one of the best picks that will go down ever in franchise history.
So early expectations, in the preseason, everyone knows what happens. Dak is lighting it up. He is just completely killing teams in the preseason. And everyone's like, oh shit, Dak. And then Romo goes down and everyone's like, oh shit. And it completely changed. Even for me, I was just sitting on the floor like, what the hell? Because this season was, for me, the make or break season for Romo. After being injured last season and the success of 2014, this was it. Make or break. Get to the Super Bowl. And unfortunately, it didn't work out for him. So then Dak is thrust into the starting role, and I don't really know what to think. I'm positive because I like the team. Duh, I'm a Cowboys fan. I'm always going to believe. But then you remember 4-12, and you're pessimistic, like, oh, God, man, please, not again. Definitely a pessimistic view going into the season, but hoping for the best.
Mm-hmm. I didn't think that, obviously, was going to happen with Dak exceeding all expectations, but I still had them winning the first game. I still had confidence in them being able to beat the Giants the first game, and I wasn't really, I was worried, but I wasn't like in total shock or in total dismay or anything like that.
Week 1 versus the Giants. I love playing the Giants week 1. It's like a tradition, and thankfully that continues into 2017. The Giants defense was built to beat the Cowboys, and that was before they had Zeke and before they had Dak. They were thinking, all right, we got to control the line of scrimmage because of that great offensive line. So they went and got guys like Vernon, Snacks Harrison, and they already had JPP on the team. So, the week 1, it was a battle. And it was a very frustrating game. I think what this game came down to was the team just wasn't ready. They weren't ready to go out and dominate like they did later in the season. Play calling wasn't what it was later in the season. And then, the rookie factor. Dak had a solid game. He did everything that he needed to win the game. And then on the other hand, for me, Zeke, it was disappointing because I just, he was my guy. I wanted to see him go out and rush for 200 yards and completely kill the Giants. But the thing is that he was just being very tentative in this game. He was running into blocks. I know we disagreed about this, but you could see later on in the season, that's just what it was, because the dude is one of the best at picking his spot. Mm-hmm. He would get through the mess and just freaking take it up to the house.
Yeah, in the first game, Spagnuolo did really have a good game plan. He would bring an extra guy into the box every time Zeke was in there, and he'd take him out whenever Alfred was in there. I think Spagnuolo fully knew what Zeke was capable of, even though he was heading into his first game. And he said, look, if they're going to beat us with Alfred, you know what, so be it. But we're not going to let this kid run rapid on us in the first game. I'm not going to let him do what he did to Cam in the preseason. And I guarantee you that was Spagnuolo's just number one key. They have a rookie quarterback. You know what, just stop the run and we should be good. It was only a 1-point loss. I still feel they played really good, but as you saw later on, Zeke did become more patient. Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Mm-hmm. That's the way that he ended up started playing. And then once he would hit those holes, he just, anytime he could take it the distance.
I think what made it so frustrating was the potential that you knew was going to come and what did come. And really, I think they should have won the game. Some people say it'll come down to Terrence Williams not going out of bounds. I really think that Dan Bailey would have made that field goal because he wasn't injured at the time. Which is what led to some misses later on in the season. The 1-point loss, that's always tough to swallow, especially week 1 with all the hype going into it.
I was really pissed off.
Yeah.
We were both pissed off.
we were both
pissed off at each other.
At
everything, man. We didn't want to fucking talk to nobody.
After 4-12, we wanted to freaking win.
Leading up to the Green Bay game, since we're going to pick up that spot right there, there was a lot of teams like the Bengals, the 49ers, the Bears, the teams to set the tone of the season, just to really start getting going, to get Zeke going, and that's what they needed, honestly. It was like the tune-up game. You ever watch The Longest Yard? But anyways, so when we got to the Packers game, man, without Dez, with just basically, man, Zeke, it's all you, man. The play that really kick-started that game was that jet sweep to Lucky right before the end of the half. Man, that was a brilliant play call. Maybe some people want to say Dak did have a really good game that game. In my eyes, he was just a really, I guess, steady pace in that game. It wasn't too flashy, it wasn't too anything, even though they did come out on top of that game.
Well, I mean, he did make Bryce Butler look like this, right?
Yeah, he did. He made Bryce Butler look really good. And actually, I think that ended up being one of Zeke's best games of the season. I think according to Pro Football Focus, he had 99 yards after contact that game. And that's astonishing. For any running back to do something like that, 99 yards after contact, it's not all the offensive line. I mean, the offensive line does a great job, but I think that game really, once they went in with both rookies, no Dez, went into hostile territory in Lambeau Field, I think that just really, boom, just, you know what, here we go. Here's the run now.
At this point, they were 4-1 on the season, and I think like everyone that I talked to was like, okay, 4-2 before the bye, you know, Romo's gonna come back. But for me, this was the game I was like, okay, you're going into Green Bay, and if Dak wins this, it's his team. I mean, that would be 5-1. You're going up against one of the perennial NFC contenders at their house, one of the toughest places to play. This was it. And you know, Dak went out and he won the game. I mean, and that was his team. I mean, the locker room changed. It was already changing before then. But I think this is what solidified him in the world's eyes. And I just want to make a point, too, about Green Bay, playing that man Green Bay. It's bullcrap that they haven't got to play Green Bay at home. And luckily, again, the schedule makers have changed that in 17. We get to play them at home at our house. Hopefully getting a little revenge for the divisional round. Yeah, some of the things that we were talking about, like as far as Dak and the offense goes, like you were saying after week one in the first few games, like, oh, this play action, boot, QB action stuff, I mean, it's all basic. Some D coordinator is going to stop it. But this team just completely perfected that, and they were unstoppable. Once Zeke dominated, Dak dominated, it was just a chain reaction. The whole offense started clicking. That's what you saw in this game. They completely dominated. And then the defense, I mean, this was one of their best games, other than the second Giants game. That was their best game. But there was blanket coverage all over the field. Mo Claiborne, man, he was balling. Unfortunately, he got injured at the end of that game. But, I mean, the defense did everything they could. And the guy who really benefited from that was David Irving. He had 3 strip sacks, or 3 forced fumbles in that game. He really blew up in that one. I remember that QB draw that Rodgers ran in the end zone. I remember tried running into the end zone, and I saw that play a mile away. I mean, they run it all the time. And Irving apparently saw it a mile away too, and he just freaking punched that ball out of him. He had no chance. It was a great team game.
Yeah, really hitting into that game, the Dallas had a really good game plan. They just, most of the time, since Lacey was hurt, they really didn't have an established run game. Most of the game, they really did just rush only 3 or 4 and just dropped everybody else in the coverage and just had the spy on Rodgers the whole entire time, which ended up being Durant. I remember that face mask penalty that really got me pissed off. Now, what I'm really looking forward to this coming season, just to touch on bases real quick, is Jalen's probably going to be that spy on Rodgers, and I hope he gives Rodgers hell.
I mean, this next draft, hopefully, my mindset would be you're drafting to beat the Packers. You know, you're going to face them. They're always going to be there. It's just, they're the Packers.
Even though you might want to say you're drafting to beat the Packers, but you're drafting to beat that repertoire, because that's what's so popular in the NFL today. Just spread them out and just throw the ball around the yard. All right, week 7, right after the bye, Eagles game. Man, heading into this game, I felt so confident. I know the Eagles had just beaten Minnesota. In the NFL, it's all about a matchup game. And the Eagles had a really good front 7. They didn't have a good secondary. The Vikings didn't have a good offensive line, obviously. They didn't have a run game. And they didn't have receivers that could separate from the Eagles secondary, even though they were horrible. So heading into this game, you know, it's a matchup game. Nobody on the defense can cover Dez. We have the best offensive line in football. I actually went to this game, and man, it's. I know I want to be confident, but man, at the end of the day, it's a division rival, and anything can happen. And it was really a frustrating game. It was Dak's worst and best game at the same time. They started off real slow, especially with the settling for field goals and stuff, and then they really started turning it up toward the end of the fourth quarter. And Sean Lee played like an absolute monster that game. Absolute monster. Probably one of the plays of the game was when they threw that quick flare route out to Sproles. and he just read it all the way, and the center couldn't get out there and block him. He just knocked him out of field goal range. That was probably the play of the game. And probably my favorite play of the year was in overtime, even though it wasn't flashy, it wasn't anything, not the game-winning touchdown. But when Zeke ran that zone running play and he found the hole, cut it up, and Malcolm Jenkins was just waiting right there. And fourth quarter overtime, everything's on the line. You're tired, I'm tired, and Zeke just ran him over and just planted him into the ground. And it's like, after that, we're winning this game. After that happened, and they went down there, marched down there, and Dak just did a little Romo impersonation and dumped it to Witten straight open. You would have thought Witten was playing catch before the game.
That's exactly what I was going to say. This gave me flashbacks to that Week 1 2015 win with Romo. I mean, that in my mind is one of Romo's greatest games. I'll never forget that.
Yeah, legendary stuff.
Yeah, that really gave me flashbacks. But I mean, this game was a freaking doozy, man. I mean, it was so frustrating because they had been playing so well, and then coming off the bye, it's like they were asleep. Fortunately, the defense, which was, they did this all season, they made adjustments at halftime, and it was so frustrating watching Carson Wentz. I mean, I don't know if he freaking attempted a pass over 5 yards. As soon as he got the snap from shotgun, he would just look out to the flat routes. Okay, Sproles here, it's a tight end here, that's it. Ryan Marinelli saw that, and Sean Lee saw that, and they just shut that crap down. So that really gave the offense a little bit of spark that got him back in the game. Sometimes you need more than 4 quarters to win a game, and that's what Dak needed. He needed to wake up. I mean, he woke up in the third quarter. He willed them to overtime, and what happened happened. They won the game.
I don't know what it is, but it's just like he was really sloppy with his footwork throughout the game, his just not getting his feet set and everything else, but then all of a sudden it just starts clicking in the fourth quarter and overtime, and that's what you saw with him in college, just showing up in big games at big times. It's a matter of just, I guess, stop thinking and start doing. It's just some things that players and people are born with, and he's born with it.
And to be fair, the Eagles, I mean, they have a good front seven. I mean, and they were getting after him too. It was probably one of the games that he was under the most pressure. So it was a little bit of change of the first few games that they had dominated in. I mean, the offensive line was on their heels in the first half of the game. But as the game progresses, everyone gets tired and things start settling in, and so does Dak. And
I think Brandon Graham broke the record for most pressures on a quarterback against Doug Free that game. Brandon Graham had a hell of a game, or Doug Free just had a not hell of a game.
I mean, and then he had a bad game against the Eagles the second time too. Yeah. So it was just, Doug Free struggled against the Eagles. So Steelers, Week 9. This, to me, was the game of the year. It was strength versus strength, offense versus offense. Neither team should have even fielded a defense. I don't even know if there was a punt in this game. I think there was one punt by the Steelers. But it was just back and forth. Zeke and Le'Veon Bell completely dominated the game for their offenses. They just set the tone.
I just had this feeling that Zeke was going to go off this game. Like, started him in all my fantasy lineup, my daily fantasy lineup, so I just knew he was going off this game. Lo and behold, he did. And it was a pretty emotional game for Dez, too, just right after losing his dad. And he still ended up playing. That Dak chunked it up to Dez, and they had one-on-one coverage of it. It was a third and long. I know it was more than 3rd and 10. I honestly think it was caused by a Doug Free penalty, I'm pretty sure. And Dak was holding onto the ball, and I just said, "Let it go!" And I yelled, and lo and behold, it fell right into Dez's hands. And that was one of the more memorable plays of the year, especially just right after what happened to Dez. And it was just a great game overall, and it's probably the highest I've ever jumped when Zeke just bursted off that run.
Yeah, that 50-yard bomb to Dez was one of those gut-clenching plays because he kind of bobbled it. I was like, ugh! They needed that touchdown at that point. This game, it looked like it was in hand for the Cowboys in the fourth quarter with that Zeke TD run. And then, Roethlisberger, visions of freaking Dan Marino with that spike touchdown pass. Him and AB just had something drawn up before the game, and that was an amazing play. I mean, you didn't expect it coming, and we had an injury in the secondary, so they just took advantage of it. But something in my gut told me there's 42 seconds left. I believe Dak's he's gonna drive him down the field, and he did it. I mean, with 42 seconds left, a few passes to Witten, a few passes to Beasley, and then a couple of stupid face masks by the Steelers defense. One of them called and one not. Fortunately, the one on Witten was called. Anyway, that got them into field goal range, and it looked like, that was it. But they had one more play in them. The Steelers defense was loaded up for the run, and then Dak hands the ball up to Zeke, and Tyron Smith just completely demolishes the guy in front of him, and a whole wide as hell open. Zeke burst through it. The safeties are too shallow to even recover. And that sealed it. This was one of those legendary games. I mean, it was all out, balls to the wall, and they survived. So the streak of December games starts, and the Cowboys are on a 10-game winning streak. And, you know, the next teams on the docket were Vikings, Giants, Bucks, and Lions. And these guys were all, I mean, tough teams, definitely playoff contenders. And, you know, they're on this long, great streak. And all anyone outside of Cowboys Nation is talking about is the streak's going to come to an end. When is it going to come to an end? You know, this team isn't real. They beat the Vikings in a playoff atmosphere game. Unfortunately, they lose to the Giants. But, you know, that was a tough game. It was, weather conditions were poor. And the Giants, like I said before, were built to beat the Cowboys. So, you know, they lose that one. The streak ends. But then they go and they dominate the Bucks next week. And then they go and completely kill the Lions on Monday Night Football. So they just get back on top of the NFC and prove something to the world. When they had nothing to prove, they proved that they were worthy of the #1 seed. I always like to say that as many people love the Cowboys, there's twice as many that hate the Cowboys. And I'm probably wrong on that. It's probably like more like 10 times as people hate the Cowboys. So that's why, I mean, the media is driven by as many fans as there are. And, you know, there's more people that hate the Cowboys. So they completely changed everyone's mind.
Yeah, the persona with heading into December is, oh, they're going to have another December collapse or anything like that. When people say Cowboys fans like to talk about the past, like, why are you talking about the past? This is a different team. This is a different mindset. These are young guns that are out here running in front of the best offensive line in football. And I just didn't understand the notion around it or whatever, but it's all, you know, when you're wearing that star on your helmet, it's just, it all comes with it, and it's just all part of the hoopla and the ratings boost and everything like that. But, you know, it didn't happen, and it's not going to happen again.
Yep. All right, so the divisional round, this was a culmination of seasons of hard work. They earned the #1 seed, and they're waiting for their opponent. It's either going to be the Giants or the Packers. I wanted the Packers because I thought it was a more favorable matchup. My ego wanted the Giants because I wanted to get that win. But, you know, what happens is the Packers just dominate the Giants, and they move on to the round. They come into Arlington, and they're ready to go. Plus, a big part of me really wanted revenge for 2014, the Dez catch and no catch. So, to me, this was the perfect premier primetime matchup that everyone wanted to see, and it really satisfied all NFL fans.
This game is all about a matchup game. Green Bay didn't have the secondary. I mean, they had Rodgers that could just throw the ball around the yard at the same time. But at the same time, I had confidence in our secondary. If you just play one-on-one just the whole entire game, especially without them having Jordy, you just play a one-plug defense, or you have a spy there the whole time on Rodgers. I really didn't think they could do anything, but man, Rodgers was hot, and I don't think the defense was as bad as people started judging it right after this game. I just think they just had a bad game. They just picked a bad time to have a bad game. And Rodgers started throwing it around the yard. And to get off that topic real quick, I knew Dez heading into this game, I knew this was his game. And if we were watching the game together, and I was like, man, this is his game. This is his game. To touch on Dak too in this game, he did exceed all expectations throughout the season, but there were times, I know it was first year with Dez. Had to adjust to a run heavy offense. He wasn't injured. He was injured during the season, but Dez should have been getting that ball a lot earlier in that game. And there was times where he did have chances one-on-one and stuff, and they just start going into him later. But I really felt like that did backfire on him, because even though we have a run-heavy offense and the control of the clock and everything, but it's kind of like counteractive to yourself when you're playing a team like the Packers, because it can just score quickly. And even though you're running the ball, you know what, you're wearing the mount, you're pounding the ball, and you're taking time off the clock, at the same time, they can score so quickly. You're taking time off for you to also score. You're gonna have to have the ball back, and you're gonna have to score quickly, with Aaron just keeping on throwing the rock around the yard like he was that Sunday.
So in this game, I mean, there were inklings in the regular season, which led to what I think was the demise of the season. You know, coming off of the bye, they seemed like they were asleep against the Eagles. They had a bye right before this game. They just came out dead. I mean, and it wasn't like the whole team like the Eagles game. It was more like certain position groups, specifically Bryce Butler and Terrence Williams. Williams drops a first down catch that completely ends that drive. Bryce Butler, that stupid, 15-yard penalty. I guess I won't hold it against him, but still, the penalty. there's something that leads into that, which is the next play.
Preparation.
Dak throws a ball over the middle, perfectly placed for Bryce to catch, and he doesn't go for it because he sees a defender in the corner of his eye. And it just, it gave me a flashback to the 2014 playoff game when Sterling Moore didn't go for the interception in the end zone. It was just like, what the hell, dude? It's all on the line. Go for the damn ball. Like, who cares if you get hit? I mean, and he probably wouldn't have even got blasted. I mean, there was a lot of plays like that just killed the drive and then didn't allow them to get into their run. And then, of course, the Packers were hot. They just started scoring. The defense, they were discombobulated. They were playing man coverage, which they did in the first game, but then Sean Lee was going out to the outside and they just exposed him. I mean, he's not a coverage linebacker, not that deep at least. So they just really, their offensive game plan was better than our defensive game plan, and their offense was just all around more prepared than our offense.
They saw what Dallas did the first time around. They took our best defensive player out of the game, and that was Sean. Sean didn't impact the game in any way. Not that it was his fault, but it's because he really didn't have a chance to.
And just like every other game, they made adjustments in the second half as far as the defense goes. I mean, Rod Marinelli is a great defensive coordinator. And, they kind of started stopping them. They got key stops when they needed them. The offense woke up. And, at the end of the day, what happened, and it was tough. But it was just a case of, a slow start killed the team. I mean, they could have just completely taken over that game because the defense caught up with the Packers. The future is bright, and you saw a lot of things happen in that game that were positive. I mean, Dak led them back. Zeke led them back. It was just an overall team effort in the second half. I think it was just a case of they almost went in with the same game plan as they had the first time around, and the Packers were ready for it. And as far as Dak getting the ball to Dez, I think in the first half, as far as being tired goes, I mean, they were locking him up. And he got the ball to other guys, and like I said before, they disappointed him. I mean, they didn't give it their all, or they dropped the pass. But, once Dez got the ball, he did start lighting it up. It just wasn't enough.
It really was a heartbreaking game, but at the same time, it was one of the most enjoyable games that I've watched. And I really wasn't mad as I would have been, like, against the Giants game or everybody, because Dak and Zeke and Dez, they played their hearts out. Everybody just left everything on the field. I know that for sure. I mean, even though the defense had a bad game, but they left everything out there, and I really couldn't be mad. I was disappointed, but not mad, just because everything was there. The effort was there.
And to even come back from so many points, I mean, it looked impossible at halftime, but somehow they willed it and they found a way, and that was a big thing with this team. I mean, whenever they faced adversity, they came back as hard as they could. Whether they won or lost, you knew that they put it all on the line.
Yeah.
All in all, I believe this season was a success. I mean, after 4-12, and then, Romo getting hurt, you have a rookie running back and a rookie quarterback. I mean, how many teams win so many games? And remember, this is the same team that went 4-12 without Romo. They couldn't do a damn thing. So you plug in these two guys, it's not always expected, but, they just click. I mean, it was a brotherhood. It was a bond. I mean, they were unfazed by anything, and the future is bright. I mean, as bright as it's ever been. As far as I've been a Cowboys fan, this is the brightest it's been. I mean, you have two young guys, so it's just the beginning. 2016 was the beginning of the future, I believe. So I'm excited.
I think the season was both a success and a failure at the same time, and the reason I feel that way is because even though, yes, we want to be optimistic, yes, this is such a great young team, but at the end of the day, nobody knows if we're going to get back there, if you're going to get back there again. I mean, the Giants got better this offseason. You don't know. There could be injuries. Knock on wood. But yeah. I'm just saying, nobody knows what could happen. Nobody knows when you're going to get back there. And it leads me to a point where I do think that at some point, Tony should have been inserted back into the game, because even though I can't be mad at Dak, because Dak exceeded all expectations and all he did what was asked of him, and he ended up doing more than that. He did exceed all expectations, and he was just doing his job. But at the same time, maybe Romo isn't as athletic as Dak, or can't get him out of certain situations. Yeah, maybe some people may say it's not fair because Tony's been in the league longer or whatever, but that's just it. That's the point. Tony's been in the league longer. He's seen a lot more, and I know after that second Giants game, Jenkins said something like guys like Tony and Rodgers, they would have been able to recognize what we were doing. Tony's always had Spagnuolo's number, and right now, heading into this next season, Spagnuolo has Dak's number. And even though he's a rookie, that's the team that they're going to have to beat, is the Giants right there. And if Spagnuolo continues to have Dak's number and being able to fool him pre-snap and stuff, I just feel like this is going to come down to the end of the race of the division.
Well, I definitely have more positive view as far as Romo goes. I mean, I kind of thought in the beginning, hey, obviously I wanted to bring Romo back in because you knew what you were going to get from him. But as the season progressed, you saw Dak just developing. I would say that Dak just wasn't as experienced as Romo, but you saw him developing with every game. I mean, the 11-game win streak and everything. You couldn't take him out. The team realized that he was the future. Why would you take your future out and stall that with putting in Romo? I have all the respect for Romo. This guy loves Romo, but Romo had a lot of injuries. He had a lot of years to do what he needed to do. He had his chances. This was Dak's time. That about does it for this 2016 Cowboys season recap. If you liked the video and you want to see more, go ahead and subscribe to us at Dos and Tres. And if you want to become a super subscriber, get notified whenever we post new videos, hit the bell next to the subscribe button.
Yeah, and follow us on our social media accounts at Dos and Tres YT. Follow us on Twitter and go like our page on Facebook.
Peace.
Peace.